The ancient Greeks thought unpleasantly of the afterlife. Death was feared due to the terror of the underworld, especially of Hades. Funerals were an important aspect of the transition from life to death. Proper ritual would enable the body to enter the afterlife peacefully, but if done incorrectly, the body would enter the underworld. Ancient Greeks believed that their psyche would be released from their bodies after they passed away. A proper burial consists of three parts: the prothesis, the ekphora, and the peridipnon. During the prothesis, women play a large role. Typically, a female relative would prepare the body for the ritual. They would wash the body thoroughly and then cover the body with oil. The body would then be dressed and taken to the highest bed in the house, where they're laid out for family and friends to come and visit and pay their respects. The next step is the ekphora. The ekphora is the moment when the body is taken to the cemetery as part of a procession. Family and friends would use this time to mourn publicly. Showing expressions of grief and sorrow was common during the ritual. Lamination of the dead is featured in Greek art as early as the geometric period, when vases were decorated with scenes portraying the dead surrounded by mourners. Once the procession reaches the cemetery, the deceased is placed in a small, elaborate box. The body is either cremated on a funeral pyre or placed in a grave. The last step is the peridipnon. After the body is laid in its final resting place, a peridipnon is performed in the deceased body's home. The peridipnon is like a banquet to honor the dead. After the peridipnon is done, offerings or libations are taken to the tomb, often sacrifices of animals, donations of food, and valuables from female family members. Each funerary process was different for each family, and the process expressed the social classes of that family. Though a person may have died, their soul is kept alive through the items put in the grave. Statues, vases, and other grave markers are placed on top of where the deceased is buried so that they'll always be remembered. The remains of the first deliberate burial was found in Frenchie Cave. This is important as this guides evidence to what people were like when the cave was occupied. Items found like bones, tools, stone obsidian tell us what they ate, how they made things, and how they traded with other civilizations. In the Minoan culture, burials were similar to the other findings from Bronze Age. Though the Minoans had two forms of burials, the Minoans used chamber tombs, which are tombs cut directly into the side of a hill. Inside of the tomb, common features include benches and staircases leading directly to the main chamber. House tombs became popular near the end of the Minoan period. It was a rectangular tomb similar to other Minoan houses. Inside, the whole life and after death concept is relevant. The Minoans inhumed their bodies in larkes, terracotta chests that were then placed inside the communal tomb. The burial itself is like a party, used to give gifts to the dead and host a communal meal. Like other Greek burials, gifts and grave goods were placed alongside of the body, items from their daily life as well as ceremonial funeral vases. In the Mycenaean culture, burials customs continued to change. The construction of cis graves, the main burial type of the Middle Bronze Age, continues, though three new different types of graves begin to appear during this time: shaft graves, tholos tombs, and chamber tombs, all designed for communal burial.
A tholos tomb, also known as a beehive tomb, is a burial structure characterized by its false dome created by corbelling, the superposition of successively smaller rings of mud brick, or more often stones.
Like the Minoans, the Mycenaeans placed grave goods in each tomb. Jewelry and weapons, personal items were the most common, signifying the social status of the dead. The bones of a previous burial were put aside to gain place for new burials. Only the last burial remains intact. Heinrich Schliemann in 1878 discovered 6 shaft graves located south of the Lion Gate entrance of Mycenae. Schliemann discovered 19 bodies in the shaft graves. Among some of the objects found, gold death masks were beside the deceased. One of the masks became known as the death mask of Agamemnon, ruler of Mycenae according to Greek mythology. Valuable objects found in the grave suggest that more rulers and elite personnel were buried here. After 1100 BC, the Greeks began to move away from group tombs and buried their dead in individual graves. The only exception, the Athenians, cremated their dead and placed their bodies in an urn. In the early Archaic period, Greek cemeteries became larger. The amount of grave goods diminished. After the decline of democracy and the resurgence of aristocratic dominance, more elaborate tombs began to show up. Painted walls accompanied by rich goods. The best example of this is the tomb of King Philip II of Macedon. It was also custom to make regular visits to a gravesite, bringing offerings that included small cakes and libations during the classical period. With elaborate traditions and burial customs, the Greeks influenced many cultures throughout the world and continue to do so today. The traditions help people view death not as frightening, but as something beautiful, creating the idea that death is not the end, but the beginning of something new.